We're here to give an update on the McKinley Recreation Center, which is the beautiful building that we're in now that will be undergoing some renovations. My name's Jan Rather. I'm the Infrastructure Engagement Specialist in the Mayor's Office. Just going to run through the agenda so you all know what to expect from the meeting tonight, but want to say thank you all for coming out. Say a quick thank you to Voices Against Violence for hosting us here, acknowledge the council person who's here as well, and then, yeah, we'll just dive into the agenda. I'm joined by Chastity Bay, who's your neighborhood engagement coordinator. And then my colleague Laura Tsutsui, who's running Zoom for us, is our digital engagement specialist. Kaz Pellegrini is the senior project architect. John Burkle is the landscape architect. And Kevin Kenna is the architect. There's a number of other faces from the city in the room. There's Mark D. Pasquale, Matt Butter, Chrisera Johnson, a few others. So Thomas Sharf from City Planning as well. So they're here as well. So before we dive into the meeting details, really the goal of today's meeting is to provide an update on the McKinley Recreation Center renovation and then answer questions and receive feedback on the project details. So with that, I'm going to hand it off to Kaz to talk a little bit about the project background.
Thanks, Jan. So first I want to talk to you guys about what the renovation is. And we're looking at the exterior and we're also looking at the interior. And we think we've come up with a good plan for the funds that we have available. But to give you a little background here and why we're doing what we're doing, I'll back up to a couple years ago. We decided to do the roof here just because there were so many leaks coming in. We also decided to do air conditioning in this gym. Both of those things are done. It was unbearable to be in here. But other things, other observations that were made while we were doing that work is how inadequate the rest of the facility was. And so the needs that we have here for the interior and exterior renovation are accessibility, safety, and acoustics. Acoustics, not only here, but throughout the rest of the building. So those are the main elements we want to address. I want to tell you about some observations I've had here over the years. Some of my other team, Mark D. Pasquale, our architect Kevin, John Burkle, and Matt. We've also worked very, very closely with the Healthy Active Living Center as well as Voices for Violence, trying to get their input. So we're really glad to be here to meet with the community to show you what we're up to. So some of the observations, one of my very first observation when I came here looking at the roof or whatever, is that I saw probably 5 seniors holding each other hand to shoulder, about 5 in a row, making sure they didn't slip going down that steep concrete way to get to the level area. This, and it's even steeper as you go down to the gym entry. This is a complete no-no. We're supposed to have an accessible entry around the building and into the building and through the building. As we walk further into the building, we can see that if you had an activity here and you happen to be disabled or you were unable to walk, you had no way to get up to the toilet rooms. And this is a major voting center. There's huge activities that happen up here. Summer camps, I've seen children everywhere having a great time. But no way to get from this space up to the toilet rooms or the seniors that are up there to get down here. We intend to solve that problem, which our architect will get into that as well. Some of the other structural problems we've had, there are stairs that lead out of this gym that are crumbling. They're literally crumbling and falling apart, and they're part of an exit way out of this gym. Our intention is to completely take away those stairs and rebuild them with something that meets code. What other things? Let's see. Yeah, the main thing is this building is used by a lot of people, it's vibrant, it's active, and it's neglected at the same time. So we plan to take the funds. We had this great opportunity when the ARPA funds, American Rescue Plan funds from COVID, came along to the city. This is a great opportunity for us to use them and use them wisely and use them well. So with that, I'd like to turn the meeting over to our landscape architect, John Burkle from MTR Pashik.
Okay, thank you, Kaz. Can everybody hear me okay in the back? Okay, great. We want to make the building accessible, and the way we start with that is making it accessible from coming off from the sidewalks, coming off from the streets, coming off from the parking area to get into the building. And so really our focus is this coming in from the main parking lot and getting down into the main entrance as well as the activity center entrance of the building. And it's very challenging because of the topography that we have there. We're going downhill to get to the main entrance, and then we're going back up to get to the activity center. And they're connected by very steep walkways that do not meet ADA currently. And then the next challenge is getting an accessible route to the very back of the building where the overhang is, where a lot of outdoor programming occurs, and making that accessible as well. So next slide, please. So this is the existing condition. You're all familiar with it. This is standing up in the parking lot, looking in towards the entryway. Next slide. Now this is a bird's eye view of the proposed design, and what we're doing here, first of all, the location of the two existing ADA spaces that are in the parking lot exceed the maximum percent of slope that is allowed for by the Americans with Disabilities Act. So we're shifting them from the right side of the parking area there to the left side where we can put in convert existing parking spaces by repaving, adjusting the grades to make them ADA accessible. And then from there, there'll be the sidewalk across the front of the parking area, past the benches, over to the main entryway. So we have here what we're proposing in terms of accessible ramps, if you will, to access each of the entrances. So the main entrance, to access the main entrance, you would come down the sidewalk, turn left, walk down to the left, or go down the ramp, and then there would be a switchback ramp to continue down lower to get you to the main entrance. That would be the accessible route. We would also maintain a set of stairs to come right directly down, but for those that aren't able to do the stairs, we have the accessible route. And that's lined with the barriers that you see there from an accessibility standpoint. So we're providing handrails on those barriers so that you have an opportunity to hold onto the railing as you're walking down the steps and then entering into the switchback ramp to get you into the main entrance. And then to get to the activity center, you just continue, instead of turning down to go down the switchback ramp to get to the main entrance, you continue past the switchback ramp, and that will bring you right up to the porch, if you will, of the activity center. So that'll be a direct access. It'll meet the ADA requirements for slope. We're really pushing out the topography there. We're going to be bringing in earth to level that area and make it so that you can have a direct entrance back to the senior activity center area of the building. Next slide, please. So this is the existing condition on The opposite side of the building, this is coming out of the activity center and coming down to the outdoor area behind the building. And here we have a very, very steep sidewalk that I wouldn't venture to go out on there today with the wet weather. So next slide, please. So what we're looking at doing here is coming out of the activity center, and then again a 5% ramp that would go from the activity center doorway, reach out along the slope because to enable to achieve the grades that we need, and then wrap its way back around to the bottom portion of the site out back. Next slide, please. So you can see here the access area on the left-hand side is the ramp coming down around that kind of goes off to the side of the slide here. And then we'll also have a staircase that will provide direct access for those that are able to do so. So with these improvements, we're making the entrances to the building accessible. We're making the outdoor space out back below the building accessible for programming activities. And that really is the focus of the project. We're doing it in a way that will be, conducive to the aesthetics of the building, and we're putting in railings that we believe will be attractive at the entrance into the building as well. Those railings are required by code. We can't get around those. We have to have those. So with that, I'll turn it over to Kevin to talk about the interior of the building.
Thank you. Okay. I'll try to speak up as much as I can. I'm not known for being the loudest person, but so now that we've discussed John taking us from the parking lot up to the building, we want to talk about some of the accessibility improvements that we're trying to make on the interior of the building as well. A couple of photos, you might recognize the existing conditions of the building. Some of the things that Kaz already mentioned were that once you're inside the building, there's accessibility concerns about getting up to the restroom level. Once you're up there, we did notice that the restrooms themselves are a bit dated and are not accessible in and of themselves. One of the things that we wanted to do was provide a platform lift at the staircase since we're kind of hemmed in with the existing structure. Basically, it's a platform that folds down off of the wall. Normally stored, folded up, it's about 17 inches in width. When needed, it folds down and it lifts up or rides up basically the angle of the staircase to take people up to that upper level. The more difficult problem is creating accessibility for the restrooms. There's not currently an accessible stall in there wide enough. And without taking down some of the existing bearing walls, that would be fairly difficult. So the solution that we've come up with is to create a single-user accessible restroom in the location where the mechanical room currently sits. The snowball effect to that is that we're also having to replace the mechanical system to relocate a lot of those pieces that are currently housed in there. And before moving on to the next slide, we also wanted to address some other issues. Kaz touched on the kind of damage to the existing building. We have noticed that there are some issues with waterproofing along the front face. This being a hillside, I know we're kind of at the top of a point, but we're collecting water against this wall, and it's an issue that I understand has been happening for a while, and there have been attempts to repair it, but we're still not getting there. So one of the things we're going to try and do is dig down further and re-waterproof at this entire section on the other side of the storage room here and try to address those concerns. Go to the... So like I was talking about, one of the things that we need to address is the mechanical system. Right now there's a furnace in that mechanical room, a water heater, there's a janitor sink on the wall. All of those will be relocated to the adjacent storage room. The furnace will be replaced with a rooftop unit. The hot water heater will also be relocated over, and the utility sink replaced with a mop sink. So one of the things I wanted to touch on is that the storage room does go away, but one of the things that's already been in progress is reallocating some of the space down below for the existing storage. We understood that there's a fairly large basement underneath the building on the other side here that the rec center hasn't had access to. And so one of the things that I believe the Parks Department's been working on in conjunction with Public Works, already been done, so, sorry, is to try and alleviate some of those concerns over the lost storage on the inside with replacing it in the basement space. I know that's not an ideal situation, but it ends up being a net increase in storage capacity. Some of the other, I think, less impactful, but things to touch on that we are doing. There's also lighting replacements that are going to happen throughout the building with LED light replacements. We're replacing most, if not all, of the doors in the facility. There are a number of them that have shown some wear and tear over the years. You can see an example over at the storage room. There's various bits of age on some of them, so we want to make sure that those are working correctly, secure, and functioning. We're looking at replacing them with as much glass as we possibly can, trying to open up the space a little more, trying to make it a little more inviting, get some natural lighting as much as we possibly can. I know it's difficult in some of the interior areas. Drinking fountain, bottle filling station, those are kind of required by code. They're accessibility things. We have to provide those. Finish replacements. My understanding is that the gymnasium has been done fairly recently, so that's not currently part of our scope of work outside of acoustics. But from basically that point over, we are looking at repainting, new flooring, pretty much from top to bottom out into the senior room. That includes some upgrades to the kitchen area. If you can switch to the next. So like we talked about, we kind of already touched on these actually, but the acoustics, we're looking at panels on the walls to try and cut down on the reverberations. We've been discussing possibly a fabric panels at the ceiling to try and cut down on that bounce as well. Being such a large space, it is kind of difficult, but we're trying to do as much as we can to cut down on that noise. And then the storage we kind of discussed already, that's already been completed. And then the door replacements as well. So there's a lot of things that we're required to do from an accessibility standpoint, but at the same time, there's, I think, a long list of small things that we're trying to do to add up to a larger improvement here. So, just some overviews. This is the platform lift I was discussing. It essentially folds up against the wall, folds down, has barrier arms. When it's in motion, there are sensors underneath to stop it if there's any kind of obstruction underneath for safety concerns. You can, next slide. And then just a quick overview of some of the finished selections we're looking at. The new restroom would be all tile. We're looking at somewhat similar to what the style that's out here already, a linoleum, either tile or sheet product, depending on the application. And then the paint selections, we're not trying to reinvent the wheel, especially since this space isn't going to change. We want to kind of stay with that blue and natural tones throughout the space. So that's, I think, the long and short of it. I don't think there's anything else. So.
Thanks, Kevin. Thanks, everybody, for sharing about the project. That pretty much sums up the presentation portion of tonight's meeting. Looks like there's some boards around the room that folks will be able to get up and look at, but kind of want to use this opportunity to take some questions. If any folks have any feedback or comments, I know one of the questions, and we've already had some conversations with folks, are just, for the kitchen replacement, what the current use of the kitchen looks like, hearing about that so that, can hopefully incorporate those plans into the future kitchen replacement as well. So I guess if there's folks online who have questions, you can put them in the chat. We'll have Laura ask questions. And then if folks in the room have questions, if you want to raise your hand, I'll call on you and hand you the mic. I do ask that you speak into this mic. It's for the folks that are listening online and for the recording that will be posted after the meeting. So anybody in the room have a question?
When are the renovations scheduled to start, and how long will it take for them to be completed, interior and exterior? Okay, great.
So this is my first community meeting where we've gotten a flood alert. So for anybody who didn't hear, the question is when construction will start and how long it might take. I don't know if there's somebody from DPW that wants to take that.
Where we are with the project currently is we're hoping to have it permitted and under contract by early to mid-summer at the latest. At that point, we could probably go anytime, but we want to cooperate with the usage of the building, which is what we always do. And the best time we figured will most likely be after the summer school program. And we will start outside first and hopefully be done. They can still proceed with their after-school program internally, and hopefully we'll be able to move inside and completed before June when Voices Against Violence starts their programming again. So we hope to start no later than late summer, early fall, and be completed by next spring.
Is there a question here?
So how does that affect the voting? This is a voting facility, so how will that affect, the polls whenever people need to come to vote in November?
So the question was how construction will impact the use of this facility as a voting center.
So in an ideal scenario, we would have the building interior and exterior start in the fall. The one thing that Mark didn't mention, maybe he didn't and I didn't hear him say it, was this is a mechanically driven project. And so we don't know when the mechanical equipment will come in. There have been long lead times and delays, shipping issues. They've started at COVID and they haven't really stopped. So right now, ideally, I'm sure we could do some work on the perimeter. We would always leave a safe way in and out of the building. If we couldn't do that, we would work with the county and move the location to somewhere where everybody can get in and out safely. So that's a question that remains to be known and refined as we get a little further along. Very good question, though. Thank you. Yep.
And I think you had a question here, so I'll come back to you.
Thank you. Yep. So, two questions. The covering on the wall is, what is that? Is it going to be flush, like flat to the wall? Is it, what kind of material will it be? If you said that, I'm sorry. And how durable and what's its life expectancy with all of the activity. And then the other thing, you said you're going to move the mechanicals to the basement with no access. Is that what I understood?
I'll let them answer, but
okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, so the first question was about the acoustic paneling in the room, what that material would be, whether it would be flush against the wall, and the durability of that. And then the second question was about the mechanical room, with it being replaced, where it would be moved, and what access would look like. Is that right? Okay.
So to the first question about the acoustic panels, generally the ones on the walls are made with a layer of plywood, and then they have a layer of foam attached on top of that, and then they're wrapped with a piece of fabric. So they're generally about 2 to 3 inches. I'm sorry. So the construction of the materials is that it generally starts with a layer of plywood, a thicker grade plywood, and then there's a layer of foam that gets attached to that. And then all of that gets wrapped in a layer of fabric. So the plywood is your primary structural layer, but it's protected by those other 2 layers that are doing most of the acoustics. They're attached to the wall directly, and they stick out generally 2 to 3 inches from the face of the wall.
Are you talking from the floor up? Or?
No, so we would be looking at up higher to avoid people running into them or being able to tamper. Yeah. Yes. Or do you want to?
Yeah. I'll just have him answer the second question, which was about the mechanical room, and then we'll go to the next question.
Okay. So to the second question about the mechanical system, there would actually be very little, if anything, related to the mechanical systems in the basement. Everything would actually be roof mounted. So the way the system works is that you have a roof mounted unit that cycles refrigerant down into a smaller piece that's attached in line with the ductwork above your head, like in the ceiling. So the refrigerant cycles back and forth and rejects the heat through that or the cold air. And then the units that are above the ceiling are the ones that, as the refrigerant brings that hot or cold refrigerant through the unit, that's the unit that blows the air throughout the building. So what we're talking about is, I think the biggest one inside is 9 to 10 inches in depth, so they're not excessively large pieces. And because of their increased efficiency, the units on the roof aren't overtly large either. I apologize, I don't know the exact dimensions off the top of my head for the rooftop units, but we've been using those for a while to pretty good success. And I feel that would free up a lot of space on the inside. So.
And does that mean that those window units come out and you'll have more light coming into the space? You won't have those units blocking windows.
Right, yeah. Oh, sorry.
Just going to repeat the question for folks on Zoom. Question is whether this means the window units will come out and allow for more light to come in.
And I assume you're referring to the ones in the senior center room? Yeah, so the unit that's in that closet is also part of that replacement as well. So we have another rooftop unit that feeds down into that one. And I believe there's a condenser that's currently down in the basement that we would remove as part of the project as well because it's not needed anymore. So yeah, it would affect all of those rooms, so the window units would not be needed anymore as well. And I think there was...
Ms. Clancy, I think you had a question. It's just for folks online to hear.
Okay. I just wanted to ask the question about the padding for the walls. Do the padding have to go on all walls? Because I don't know if all city employers were actually notified that this wall was painted for a mural to go up on. So there's a mural going on this wall, like soon, and we just don't want nothing to cover that mural.
So the question was about the mural that's going to be installed here soon, whether the panels would cover that up.
That's certainly something that we can work around. You know, we can apply more panels to the other walls if this is the primary mural wall and stay away from that. We can also look at increasing the amount of acoustics that are overhead. We can either go with kind of a fabric panel that goes above between any of the joists here, or we can go with those hard acoustic panels overhead as well. So, you know, I certainly don't want to, you know, step on anything that's planned in there. So if we need to stay away from that, then that's perfectly fine. We'll just work around that and try to do the best that we can to improve the acoustics as much as possible. So, sure.
All right, and then we got a question back here. Yep.
earlier you were speaking about the exterior being the starting point, per se. A main concern that's immediate is the parking lot. When that was constructed, it was explained by the constructors that there was never a sealant put on that asphalt, which is why it's picking back up and distributing rocks all through here, and it's a hazard, an immediate hazard for these seniors. Would that be part of the starting point of the exterior to have safe access into this building?
So the question is about the asphalt parking lot and whether right now it's deteriorating a little bit, or it's less safe for the seniors to traverse, and whether that's part of the exterior renovations.
Very good question. Thank you. What the history behind that project, I would say back in around 2009-ish, something like that, Pittsburgh Parks Conservancy came along and they had some funds where they wanted to help with stormwater management. So what you're feeling out there, it's a porous surface, which is, it allows the water to go through, but it is also able to drain into that rain garden in the center, and that helps slow it down from going into the storm lines. So with that said, we pretty much cannot seal over that, otherwise it'll become a pervious paved area. But with this new design, what we're doing is we're taking all the handicap spaces, and I believe there's 4 of them. 4 total, John? I think there's 4 total, and those will be impervious. They'll be impervious, so water cannot go through those. Those will be at the right elevation. They will slope in the 1% maximum that you're allowed for handicapped person parking. So they're 2%. Sorry, I was a percent off there. But yeah, those will be solid. They won't be open. They won't be pervious like the rest of the area is and has to be. So that area we can't really change, but we do intend to change it where seniors have to get out of the car, or anybody has to get out of the car and walk along that surface. They're less likely to slip from granules, as you say. But because of that design and the funds that were spent, we pretty much have to keep it that way. Okay.
And I think this picture, and you can clarify if I'm wrong, but shows the different materials where they would switch for the handicapped accessible parking.
Yeah, that darker color is the impervious. The gray color is the impervious. So there's quite a bit there.
All right. Any other questions that we can answer? Anybody online have a question? Yep.
This may have already been addressed and I may have just missed it, but is the roof already intact? Does the roof need to be replaced or anything like that as we're trying to do the other renovations?
Again, the question was about the roof and whether it's already been replaced or if that's part of this project.
Yes, the roof has been replaced, as was all of the coping, which is the metal material that goes around the whole perimeter of the building. That was done, and they did a very good job on it. The other thing that was done was the air conditioning for this gym space. So those 2 things are kind of out of our way. They also sealed and recoated some of the stucco that wraps around the building as well. So our hope is when we walk away from this, it'll be a nice, new, fresh-looking building. It's not there yet. We'll get there.
Thanks. Any other questions? Want to make sure that folks feel like they have the opportunity to ask questions, get them answered here? Okay.
Get that in here. A little area for the dogs, like a dog park, because the dogs are really, really messing up on everything.
So the question was about a dog park and whether it could be added because of the dogs in the area.
Excellent question. Again, everybody asks it. But because this project is limited to accessibility, structure, and safety, our limit is with the building and its immediate surroundings. That question, I'm gladly able to punt to our landscape architecture division.
Anybody else? Another question here, and then we'll go to Aaron in the back.
Another issue that I was speaking with some of the seniors and in general was the security and lighting. I don't think there are security cameras here per se, or any type of emergency lighting system that's accessible for the people in general that are able to either turn it off or turn it on. And is that going to be part of the process?
Sounds good. So the question was about emergency lighting, security, particularly security cameras and lights that can be turned on and off for emergency purposes.
Sure. So part of the lighting replacement, we are having, it's part of the electrical code, but we are planning on having emergency lights in each room. There's essentially an emergency circuit in the event of an emergency, a power loss, things like that, that there's a certain number of lights in each room that can kick on to put in basically a minimum amount of lighting to stay on in the event of an emergency. From a control standpoint, I believe the current codes call for at least some kind of occupancy sensors in most rooms to be able to limit people leaving the lights on for energy purposes, but we would have overrides to that, a manual on-off, things like that. Sorry, is that kind of what you were going for, or? Okay. Oh. Yeah, and one thing Kaz mentioned is that the part of that energy efficiency is replacing all the units with LEDs to hopefully create some savings as well on usage. The one thing you did mention that I'm not sure if I can answer adequately relates to the security cameras issue. Yeah. No, that's generally a city,
Yeah.
Also, by opening up the doors, we're creating safety too.
Yeah.
Glass doors and
So a lot of the projects that we're doing now, we're working with public safety to provide cameras in a lot of the newer facilities. That's honestly one that we haven't brought up with Parks and Recreation as to if they want it here or not. It's certainly something we can provide. But we do, there's always this issue about working, whether public safety takes over or Parks and Recreation has it. But it is one of those things that we're getting ever close to solving. So since you brought it up, I think we need to address that and make sure that it either happens here. I can't speak for parks or the upper echelons of the city, but I don't see it as a bad thing at all for any building. Some people don't like it, honestly, they don't want the cameras everywhere. So I think we'd probably have to take a consensus and pursue that.
Thanks, Kaz. Aaron, did you still have a question?
Hi, Erin Tobin with the Parks Conservancy. This is awesome. Yay. I just wanted to comment that we, Parks Conservancy, are also planning an improvement project to the park, which some of DPW is where I know Jan is, and city planning and the councilman, and of course the community, for 2025. So I guess my question is, my understanding is that this will be groundbreaking in 2024, fall of 2024 is the goal, right? The goal. Okay, wonderful. Just want to continue the coordination because we, of course, are also going to be working in this part of the park as well. And then I guess my question is like, who is the best person besides Chastity? I know she comes on behalf of the mayor's office to like answer questions from the community, have an ongoing conversation, because I know that it's been really, like, this community is really engaged and they want to ask questions and have this kind of, like, the effort that it took to put this meeting on, I know was big. So is there somebody, is it Jan, is it, like, who can they email on a regular basis? Who can they get updates from? Because they're excited and you know, obviously VAV and Erlene and Richard are here every day. So I guess, sorry, that was a lot. Who is the best person to talk to about this and have a regular communication with around the updates? Because this is a really big deal and it's going to impact a lot of programming here.
All right, so I'll try to summarize. It's fine. Pittsburgh Parks Conservancy has some other work they're doing in the park, and they were wondering about coordination around construction at this facility and with their project. And then the second piece is just about ongoing communication about this project, other issues. My role as the infrastructure engagement specialist is to, you know, be the constant liaison between the community and DPW. I also do the same thing for DOMI. Chastity is your front-facing person, and she can bring those issues to me. My email address is also on this last slide if anybody wants to contact me directly, but work very closely with Chastity to bring up any issues you all have. So feel free to get in touch with myself, with Chastity. I believe the councilman's office is also typically available to residents if there's any concerns. I'll make sure, or between us, we'll make sure that DPW provides updates as the community desires. I will hand it off to somebody else to talk about coordination with the Pittsburgh Parks Conservancy projects.
You know, I didn't get the question about the Pittsburgh Parks Conservancy.
So you can correct me if I'm wrong, but from my understanding is your project is kicking off next year, and it's just about coordination between the construction here and the work that you all are doing in the park, how to coordinate that. Yeah, it's a small area. Yeah.
Great question. It can get pretty confusing out there, but what we know. What we normally do in these situations where there are multiple projects going on is we'll invite you, when you're ready, you tell us, we'll invite you to one of our job progress meetings, and that's where we hash out all the details. And you know, it depends if we're into construction yet or not. That's a great place to resolve issues and problems. But I think if we want to get ahead of it, if you get in touch with us, let us know exactly what you're doing. Maybe we want to get together even earlier on, like before they even break ground.
We're in touch with the director, obviously, and I'm sure that it's a shit, no one knows that. So it's actually a funded city project. So you guys are aware, I just wanted to kind of say, because I know there's a lot of people, I think that are involved in this work. So I just wanted to say out loud, we want to be as helpful and non-constructive as possible. Because there's just a lot more on the park, which is awesome.
So the comment was that they're already in touch with a lot of folks at DPW, just making sure that we can coordinate these two projects across project managers, and we will make sure that happens. Any other questions in the room?
How can we coordinate this with the after-school program?
Question is about coordinating construction with the after-school program.
Another good question that comes up often in these large construction projects. I think what's probably going to happen here is we would have to move to another site, move that program to another site or location that would be discussed, you know, amongst everybody. But it would be far too dangerous in a construction site, whether it's inside or out. Both will be happening at the same time, more than likely. So I think the idea would be to start thinking about where that program could be moved to instead of here.
And we can continue conversations as we find out more about the timeline to figure out what that is about. Before I take any more questions here, I want to remind everybody about the City Cuts program. So in the mayor's office, we also help facilitate the City Cuts program. So that's a program the city runs for elderly, veterans, disabled folks who are income qualified to help get their lawns cut through over the summer. Chastity's facilitating that program out of our office. So if you want to talk to her, if you are interested in the program or know somebody who's interested, we're trying to get more signups as well. So just wanted to throw that out there. If
Yes. So who do you get the application? Online. For the city cuts? Yes.
Yep, so the City Cuts application there, if you Google City Cuts, there is a web application, but the easiest way is probably to call 311, and they will walk you through the process and fill out the application with you. With that short announcement, any other questions in the room? All right. We'll be around. Folks on Zoom will probably cut the feed, but the project manager, the architect, the landscape architect here to talk with folks. I believe there's still pizza. Grab some pizza, take it with you. Take a look at some of the renderings, but really thank you all for coming out, for asking questions. Thanks to Voices Against Violence for hosting us here. Thank you all.